So this is our challenge. Now we're going to change the situation. We've already started to change the situation. And when I talked about today marking the beginning of things being different, that's really a little bit of a mistake because actually we've been changing for a number of months now. And this is the culmination of some of those changes that have already started. But with the decision announced by President Obama and with many of the coalition partners indicating the same intent, what we are going to do now is be in tremendous position to go forward. I think we've got a foundation on which to build where we go forward. So I have exceptional confidence right now. Because, of course, General Carter is a Brit, I had to quote a great British hero, Winston Churchill, because if you think about where we are now, even though it's 8 years, this is not the end. This is not even the beginning of the end. I think it's the end of the beginning, and I think everything changes right now. So why do I think things are different? First off, I get around the battlefield a lot, and that's one of the great parts of this job. I get to go out and see different elements, and so I can see what happens in Kabul, and then I can go out and see what happens in a fairly small organization and get a sense for the texture of things. It's never a complete picture. I went to Baraki Barak in Logar province. And what we've had in a fairly limited amount of time is a coalition and Afghan partnership that went in and partnering with the local Afghan National Police and an Afghan National Army element and creating security zones or security bubbles. Attacks are down 62%. Intelligence tips provided are up 80%. And that's not the only place in Afghanistan that's happening. That's one place where people went in and they figured out how to do counterinsurgency right. Because counterinsurgency starts, as you know, with protecting the people. Because at the end of the day, the people are what we are here for. We're here to respect the Afghan people. We're here to protect the Afghan people. We're here to enable the Afghan people to build their country. We are not going to nation build. What we are going to do is allow a nation to nation build. Okay, so the 4 buzzwords. You got to have buzzwords. So what did we come up with? The first one is clarity. What do I think we have? When I got here in June, we were tasked to do an assessment. We were tasked to study the situation, which we did. Got an offer. I released that after 60 days or 70 days. It promptly got leaked to the press, although it was a classified document. But what it did is it forced us to focus. It forced us to start and understand the situation even more than we might have otherwise. It forced us to put our minds around what it is we were doing here. The recent decision-making process that happened in the United States and has been paralleled in other countries has done much of the same. When the strategic assessment or initial assessment was called, was put into D.C., what they did was they went in a very intense decision-making process. And it involved a number of video teleconferences with us here participating back with the leadership in Washington, D.C., 5 or 6 with my president. There's a time difference. So 2 things could happen. He could either get up in the middle of the night and BTC with me in the day, which didn't happen, or I could drag myself up at 3:30 in the morning. But it was an honor. Once or twice, and then it was work. No, it was really good, because what we did was we focused on the problem and we talked about it and we worked it through. I've been to Brussels 3 times, Bratislava, met with NATO leaders and done the same sort of thing. So what I would tell you is I got here in 2002. I've never seen people focus on this problem like we have. We have constant meetings, our element with ministers, Wardak Atmar and Director Sala as part of the intel or the security element. So we have got a focus we've never had. So we understand the situation better than we ever have. We understand the breadth of the problem and the challenge. And I don't think we underestimate it like perhaps we might have been guilty of in the past. We also have a changed political environment. As you know, we went through the elections on the 20th of August. The elections were actually security-wise an incredible success. We enabled a lot of people to vote. The elections had their own problems with fraud, okay? But through that process, it pulled the security parts together and it focused the world on what happened. People who never heard of Afghanistan were talking about who the candidates were for president. Pretty extraordinary, and that's a good thing, because as we then talked about a runoff, we then had decisions, and then we conducted an inauguration, it brought the focus in, and it brought the understanding in, and that's clarity. Then we got clarity in our mission through that decision-making process I talked about. Everybody looked at what we were doing, and instead of using broad words, they started to go in. I spent a whole night one night defining defeat on a civets. But that's good, because people had thrown words around before, and they hadn't stopped and said, and we were all guilty, to focus. What does that mean? What are we going to do? What are we trying to do? Who's responsible to do it? And now our mission is to prevent the insurgency from being an existential threat to the government of Afghanistan and prevent al-Qaeda or other international terrorists from using Afghanistan as a safe haven. And that mission's clearer to us now. I think we've also got clarity on the way ahead in a new way, because we understand counterinsurgency better than we used to. I think in many cases in the past, we didn't think enough about it. I think 2001, many of us have learned a tremendous amount that we may have known from books, but now we know from experience. And now we have young sergeants, young officers who've been on the ground and dealt with people and understand counterinsurgency and understand at the end of the day it's relationships, and it's relationships with people, and it's credibility that matters. The second word of our buzzwords is capability. And what we're talking about here is we are more capable than we used to be. And I think we've got a foundation I mentioned on which we can build a successful way ahead better than before. There's been a lot of focus on force levels. Everybody says capability equals X thousand forces. That's not the case. And in fact, as we put in our initial assessment, we said there are a number of things we had to do, and if we didn't do those, force levels were not important. And we have done most of those now. And if you haven't stopped and thought about it, in the last 6 months, we've accomplished an amazing amount. First off, we've stood up the Intermediate Joint Command, General Rodriguez's 3-star headquarters, to coordinate the fight across the regional commands. Never had that before. That has enabled my headquarters, the ISAF headquarters, to do what we call up and out. More political, more engagement outside. We've stood up the NATO training mission in Afghanistan. Our main effort in the way ahead is building Afghan National Security Force capacity. And so what we have done is make that a NATO command now, and we're fighting to push many more resources into that so we can do that faster, we can do that better. And it's incredibly important that we do that. We've changed the way we operate. We've changed, many of you take part in video teleconferences almost daily, commanders' updates, KUAs and whatnot, and we pass information better than we used to. We've pushed very hard to get our networks out to more places, to more people, and force people to operate on them more. A few months ago, we never were partnered with our Afghan brothers doing those update briefs. Now, every day, Minister Wardak, General Karimi, myself, etc., are all networked and talk about the situation, because it's one effort, and it should not be broken down and separated. And then when I mentioned we've created capability because we're doing counterinsurgency better. We've put out counterinsurgency guidance. We've put out tactical directives, driving directives. We've taught ourselves. We've created a counterinsurgency advise and assist team. We're doing all the things we can to make ourselves better counterinsurgents, better partners. And one of the highlights of this is partnering, and that's pulling units to operate together to make both units better.